Welcome, Yamhill County, to Speaking Frankly. I'm your host, Howie Harkema, and our tagline is, "And how we doing?" We're doing great today. We have Zack Geary, who's running for the City Council Ward 2 position as re-election. So, Zack Geary, welcome.
Hi, Howie. How are you?
I'm great. So,
Good.
Zack, now that you've been at the City Council for the last 4 years, what have you learned? And give us a glance into the next 4 years if you are re-elected.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Howie. First off, thanks for having me. It is good to see you on this real definitively fall day.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so my first 4 years on city council have been just absolutely amazing. And first off, that first 4 years came at a culmination of many years of working and volunteering in the community on the planning commission or other things. But what have I learned, and what can I give you an insight into in the next 4 years? There's just a lot to be excited about, but a lot of work to do. A huge demand on our services, and we haven't been able to just keep pace with how we're growing to be able to match or stay ahead of the current demands and the demands that we know are coming down the pike. Like many jurisdictions in Oregon, our costs have exceeded our revenue due to property tax growth and regulations passed in the 90s. And for many years, the people that preceded me for future terms on the city council have made good, sound choices, but to weather recession by deferring maintenance, not raising revenue, and raising fees and costs, and keeping things low so that we could make it, like I said, make it through that recession and be a viable option to live, work, and play in some spooky economic times. But now we're coming out of that. That's a long period. Government can't really sustain on deferred maintenance and no revenue growth, and we need to make some changes, and we need to improve our systems and hit the ground running on meeting the demand for that growth that's coming, that we want to see and we want to be a part of. We're seeing an influx of growth and opportunity, as well as challenges and constraints. Like I said, our growth needs to couple with updated planning on many areas, master plans, transportation systems, wastewater master plan, stormwater master plan, parks and recreation, outdoor space master plan, SDC methodology to bring that all together to make sure that development is adequately paying for itself and our city's ability to meet that demand. Our facilities need replacement, renovation, and capital improvement plans. Our roads need capital improvement plans to be able to maintain beyond just slurry sealing and patches. We need more revenue to continue to operate that at base service levels and even minimum necessary levels, not even adding services or diversifying our services. Over the next 4 years, I want to stabilize the city's budget, update those plans and methodologies, and radically transform our facilities, as well as create systems to take care of them. Mainly and chiefly a new rec center replete with the community center offerings and aquatic center amenities will be transformative for our community in so many ways. And as a byproduct of that, it'll actually open up that community center downtown as a big available asset for controlling and maybe even making potential housing or something really transformative in the downtown core. So that's kind of what I've learned so far, and a look ahead to the next 4 years if you'd see fit to put me back in office.
That's awesome. Well, Zack, you have an incredible background, and it's prepared you for this office. Would you tell our voters exactly what you've been done in the past?
Sure. Many of you know me, and if you don't, yeah, this is a good opportunity where I can kind of introduce myself. I'm a native McMinnvillian. I'm a husband and a father. I grew up here in McMinnville, and after graduating from, I went to Memorial Elementary, and it's fun to think about. I have a second-generation Memorial Bulldogger now with my son Hiram, who's 6, and we take him over to Memorial, and it's kind of fun to relive that. And I went to, Dunaway and McMinnville High School, went to the University of Oregon. And after that, I came back to McMinnville to maintain those roots and grow them deeper and start a family here and begin a professional career. Since coming back, I've worked professionally in the construction industry and have gained a keen eye for complex problems and wading through large projects while not missing small details. I now own my own small business, and I'm aware of that balance and pressures and responsibilities that come along with that, where you're bringing people along to achieve a job for a diverse population and manage a budget and expectations and growth burdens. I've also spent time volunteering, like I said, in many areas of the community, the Downtown Association, Yamhill County Parks and Rec Board, Yamhill Enrichment Society, some more cultural organizations like the Walnut City Music Festival. I worked directly with Aussie for many years, putting that on, and myriad other volunteers, but we were really the core group of us were pushing that on and took it from the small little community thing to the bigger bursting at the seams in the granary to actually out in the park in Lower City Park, and had a really successful event pre-COVID. And then I worked with the Downtown Association and kind of created and pushed that transition from the Downtown Brown Bag concert series to the Thursday evening concert on the Plaza series. And that was really fun. And so I've had some good ties with music and cultural events. I've sort of served tirelessly and made connections far and wide to bring with me to that table and represent those things at the conversation at the table.
Well, you're infamous at the Downtown Association, that's for sure. I can tell you that.
They keep giving me the microphone, so
Yeah,
they are
there it
in
is.
need of MCs.
So experience is everything. And you have had a ton of experience, not only in Yamhill County, but all of your education. Talk about the last 4 years and what you have been able to accomplish, which is quite considerable.
Yeah. Um, Experience is everything. And I ran, so another little history about me, as I was serving and volunteering, I ran for city council prior to my planning commission experience, and did not get elected, and that pushed me to join the planning commission. I signed up and I served in the planning commission, and a planning commission is a good amount of work, but it's a fraction of what the city council does and work on a more frequent basis. And that was a really great training ground to just understanding the process of how local government works, which is in its, you could serve on nonprofit boards, you can be a part of all these other things, but the language and flow and pace and some oftentimes just didactic minutia of local government is its own dance. And it's so important that you're effective from the beginning, and to start in, as we all as kind of is that McMinnville way, we work at those other areas, and we join and we help on the budget or the planning commission or historic landmarks or all these other things, and we work our way up to being effective city councilors. There really is a lot of merit to that. You got to understand and have a good sense of the workload. The council packets of staff reports are just huge and dense and cover a wide range of topics. Consultant briefs and are full of reports and are often also wide ranging. Meeting and talking with staff and the community is constant, both about things that maybe aren't on the agenda, but just active in the community and maybe need to get on the agenda, or are on the agenda and are super important, that you don't just read the piece of paper and say what's in your head. You come to the table. You don't know how to intake, synthesize, and weigh in on things from a policy perspective, right? I know where I want to go, and I know how I want to get there, and I know how to move the ship that way. But from a more analytical perspective, because oftentimes, especially in quasi-judicial roles, we're weighing an application not on what we think of it or our thoughts and perspectives. It's on a very specific set of criteria as already written. And it's you have to be able to hold those two things independently, and it's not making value judgments necessarily. It's weighing a application on the merits of the criteria. So additionally, and lastly, and most impactfully, our budget is a huge living document. It's a continuation of year-over-year efforts and year-over-year future casting that needs context and perspective to bring people along and to enact any sort of meaningful change or purpose from it, and to have a good conversation around it. It's daunting to crack open for the first time, and to be prepared to discuss. So, but it's so important, because a city pays for what it thinks is important, and that's how you do it, is working your way through the budget. that when you talk about experience, that's the type of things I think of as, what has all those things that I get to write on my resume actually given me in terms of what the job I'm asking you to hire me for is?
Right.
And hire is a loaded word in that
Yeah.
we are volunteers at the
Oh,
end of
you
the
are
day. Don't
volunteers.
forget. So
Yeah. So, I mean, above and beyond the city council meetings, you have work sessions, you have a lot of research that you have to do. How
yeah,
does that come into play with your family life?
and try and stay dry-eyed on it. I mean, I miss a lot of bedtimes, and it's tough some days to be a part of it. But in our family, and even early on, before my wife and I had our son, and as we talked about what was important to us as we created our family, it's we give time, that we give ourselves, and our time is a huge asset that the Geary family has to give, and our expertise and information and influence and personality and all of that other stuff comes along with it. But to us, we're not incredibly wealthy people. We don't write big checks. You're not going to see our name on the buildings. We have time. We show up and we do the hard work, and that's super important to us. And that's so it's not always easy when it's multiple times a month and missing out on the whole nighttime family routine, especially with a current 6-year-old. So I started with a 2-year-old, but it's important to our family, and we are devout city service users, not even in just the boring intangible ways of I drive on the roads and I expect to be kept safe and know that the fire department is going to show up if my house is on fire, but in the other ways where we raised our son in the parks. I'm a runner. I use all of our amenities. I go to the community center. We do the shows. We look through the Parks and Rec guide and we pick out interesting classes that are new to us or familiar to us. We see what needs to have happen. So it's putting in the work that we are able to do to see and be a part of the future that benefits us and benefits everyone around us.
And I see that the city's been doing a lot more surveys to get feedback from all of the citizens of McMinnville. A lot more.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
We have if you didn't already catch it, it'll be up, I'm sure, soon. But Wednesday evening, we're recording this on a Friday morning. So on Wednesday evening's work session, was that Wednesday? No, that was Tuesday. Sorry. We had a Tuesday meeting this time, and at the 6 p.m. work session, we heard from our communications manager, Noelle Amaya, on our engagement charter and her community engagement efforts in a number of ways, just in sort of the every week newsletter of what's going on. Here are the meetings. Here's the current efforts. Here's interesting ways you can get involved, to other things where we're communicating about the city service fee. We're communicating about all these other efforts and why they're happening, communicating about the fire district discussion. And I'm previewing some of your other questions there, Howie.
No, that's fine.
It's super important that we establish what we want to communicate and how we want to do it, and keep doing that, not try one thing here or there. And we're really intentional about broadcasting that message far and wide, and taking pains to put the thumb on the scale and make sure that reaches people that historically don't get asked questions about what they want to see or how they want to see it happen. And that's super important. I'm super excited about how we are doing that extra work.
Well, Noelle's been really helpful for me with
Yeah.
coordinating the warming and cooling centers across Jam Hill County and making sure that the information gets into your website. So I really appreciate that. So the next thing is a hard question because of this. The money doesn't always, the funding doesn't always come in when you hope. And the city budget is in arrears. Would you like to speak about that and how we can move forward into the future?
Yeah, you bet. And I think I'll speak on the city budget in context of the city service fee that we brought on and the city
Right.
service charge that we brought on recently, because those are fairly inexorably linked. And overall, I just want to also stress that it's a very transparent process. Our budget in its entirety is listed on the city website. All, this many pages of the city budget are listed on the website. We have a finance director and a city manager who are happy to take time to talk about it. I'm happy to take time to talk about it. Like I said in some of my other answers already in this, it's what we do. It's where our money goes. It's what's important. It's taxes, funding, services, and so it's very open and transparent. So again, with as I talked about a little bit, with just Oregon's property tax laws and things that had happened long ago, our ability to have our revenues keep pace with our costs of delivering services, it's just inevitable that we have to either cut services or raise revenue. I firmly believe that we should smartly and wisely raise revenue to continue to offer services to people, because that's what I think government's role is to provide those and protect and fill in people's lives. So the city service charge is the method that we had the budget committee come up with after a year and a half of work on revenue options, where we outlined the need. We outlined options for revenue. I think we started with a packet of 64 options and worked our way down to 4 or 5 or 7 or so that were the most viable, and chose 4 to move forward with in the likes of franchise fees, adjustments to other a pilot, which is a really minutia thing that we charge on industrial users, mainly Cascade Steel and Air Liquide as heavy users. But excuse me, the one that we've passed and enacted, although it has yet to be anyone has yet to be charged a penny for, because it hasn't been online yet. So January is when it's targeted to begin being billed and collected, is the city services charge. And it's intended to help maintain existing staffing programs and services in things like our library, our parks and recreation, our police, and our fire and administrative offices. The city's core services, right, which are funded by that general fund. Most residents are surprised to learn that revenues from property taxes alone are not enough to cover these vital programs and services for our community. Many cities must rely often on things like supplemental funding, such as state shared revenues, franchise fees, state and federal funding, grants, program registration fees, sponsorships, private yada, 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 everything that isn't just a property tax resource. But to me, the key is sustainable city funding. Things like operating levies are great. They're direct. We ask the voters for this, and they say yes or no, they will fund it. To me, when you talk about sustainable city funding, the levy has a 3-year sunset, and it has to get renewed every 3 years. And talked with staff and have talked with people and experience under those. It's really tough to get any institutional future going when you don't know if you're going to have a job in 3 years. You don't know if you're going to be able to offer a program in 3 years. You can't build a future growth model into programming if you don't know. And we're talking about opening in the new community aquatic center, and if we want to hang the future of the operation of that facility on a every 3-year operating levy, what if 1 year it fails by 500 votes? We close and lock the door. How fair to that is that of everyone who voted to approve that facility? We have to close that facility. And so there's just all sorts of tough things around it. And we came in on this, and at the city, we understand that we need to be good stewards of that resource, of every property tax dollar, of every revenue dollar raised. And so coupling that with an honest look at the city services, everything we do is important, and we can look at ways we can do it better. But there are things that we don't do that we need to do, and there's things that we do that we need to do better. And so that city budget, like I said, it's a living document. We need to take care of it. And right now that city service charge is being brought online to just balance that, to continue to offer that. And ideally we'll couple that with those ARPA investments we made in our public works and parks maintenance fleet and many other things, and be able to get out and hit the road, and you'll see the effects of that.
Yeah, you guys passed a construction excise tax as well at the city council level.
We did.
And
We passed the construction excise tax to help fund affordable housing. We have, for many, many years, we've had what started as, forgive me if saying ad hoc committee was is too loose a term, but started as just a group to form to think about and come up with solutions to the challenge of McMinnville's challenge of affordable housing. And that group has, as the need has grown, that group's robustness has grown, and staff dedication, and that's grown from sort of a cursory advisory committee to a standing group as concrete as the planning commission or the landscape review committee. It's part of what we do. And they have there's a lot of smart people coming up with really good ideas, but we have no money to fund any of those programs or ideas that often need money to fund, or money to get a chance to get at bigger grants and bigger funds. And so this was a great opportunity that many other jurisdictions do, to put money in that bucket to fund projects to help the overall cycle of affordable housing. So yes, we put a 1 or 2% fee on there, and ideally it comes back to us in dividends by funding projects from the affordable housing group. We talk about that challenge of making housing and development pay for itself or pay for growth. And the discussion always circles around to, well, the more you put in SDCs, the higher you charge, the more that the developer is going to charge to build, and then it's just bad cycle of up. What's a telling statistic to me is we've in the look at methodology for SDCs for across the board, whatever type of project you're building, McMinnville is far and away one of the lower charges in terms of development onus. Whether it's the cost of the SDC or the amount of SDC, we are by and large at the lower end of the spectrum on our comparable cities. And yet we still face the same scale of problems and the same scale of housing inaffordability. It's hard to reconcile. For me, it's hard to reconcile that correlation when I see that as we are leaving money on the table to be able to develop and push McMinnville as a great place to be with the services that provide for people, and own up to that promise of why McMinnville is so charming and special.
So I sit on the Affordable Housing Committee.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, I'm glad to do it. It used to be called the Affordable Housing Task Force. Now it's the Affordable Housing Committee. And we sure are appreciative that you guys passed that, because now we actually have money in the coffers that we can pull from to do some magical things that need to happen around affordable housing and even low cost housing. I'm going to jump, because we did talk about affordable housing to some degree in that last segment. Let's talk about the possible changes of the McMinnville Fire Department and Fire District. I think that's a really important thing.
So we have moved, and I'm, as an elected official, even though it's not on the ballot, it's moved forward. So we're entering on the ballot time. I can talk about it as opposed to some other staff members who are unable to talk about it because it's an election related issue. And it's not because we're now looking at two close elections, two elections that are close to us in time. We're not talking about the fall election that happens in less than 2 weeks. Get in your ballots, less than 2 weeks. We're talking about the May special election for 2023. And we have put forth the initiative to form a fire district with what's currently the city of McMinnville, as well as McMinnville Rural Fire Protection Area. That will form, like, I think many people will be familiar with the concept of not just being a jurisdictional area funded by the city's general fund or property tax dollars, but a broader area of people coming together to say, we want this service. Close examples are obviously the Tualatin Valley Fire Group and Chehalem Parks and Rec District formed to be able to do some of those things. So it's a very widely used model in a lot of areas, especially when it comes to fire, where you have to own and maintain apparatus. And in McMinnville, we've kept one station and had one additional satellite station. And our service area, as we've grown, just hasn't we haven't been able to keep up with the demand on that as well. And so what we're doing by consolidating and shifting that service area and freeing it up from the city to its own, will be its own publicly elected fire board and its own governing body, is creating a new tax district to create a new fire service model separate from the city and start that. We're setting the rates now. We had 4 years ago had a study done and have been working off of that and projections there for how best to set that fire district up for financial success, to be able to pay their people, have the right staffing balance for that service area, to set themselves up to have enough fire stations put around and functional apparatus and fix their functional apparatus and all that. And that rate is going to be $2 per thousand of assessed value for property taxes. And that'll be from everyone equally in the fire district area.
And that includes unincorporated McMinnville, correct?
That does, who they've classified themselves as McMinnville Rural Fire Protection, who already exist, and we have a contracted delivery. We already provide, City of McMinnville already provides that service on a contracted basis to that area. So we're already sort of intergovernmentally we're already intergovernmentally entwined with them, and we're familiar with the roads. So it's a natural next step. The big thing that comes up, and I don't know if this is the follow-up question, but the big thing that comes up is, we have a current taxing authority that we already charge the city of McMinnville, citizens of McMinnville, about $1.50 for fire service. What are we going to do with that $1.50 when we create the new $2 taxing district?
Right.
Because now the city of McMinnville will be charging you for both. Back to the revenue needs, it hasn't been fully decided, but where we likely will go is to maintain that taxing authority, but for the term for what could be several years, 3-4 year phase back. Because while we maintain the taxing authority at $5 and some odd cents, we can choose to tax less. And so what we will do is reduce it by $1.50 of burden and phase that back in over a course of several years to lessen the burden initially. But we do plan on getting back up to that full tax burden, and we'll be, as you say, we've been good at communicating, and we're going to go back out again and have professionally done scientific polling to the community to ask, what should we, when we phase that back in, what should we be investing those resources in? More police, create more mental health services, fund more affordable housing programs. Let's build that pool and staff it adequately. What do you want to see us do? More parks development. What do you want to see us do as we phase in that next revenue stream?
So the next two questions I'm going to ask simultaneously. We have 5 minutes left. 3 Mile Lane project and 3rd Street redesign. Those are both issues right now.
Yep. It's the 3 Mile Lane is just such an interesting project, in that to be able to have that much acreage, to be able to control and master plan it, as a counselor and as a longtime citizen, it's just so exciting to be able to have such a meaty thing that we get to shape. And it is also, but it's also bringing out a lot of what we've built the Oregon system on. We need a certain type of development and the economic model we have. We need a certain type of development to pay for the infrastructure on a massive scale like that, to be able to do the other things that could make that radically exciting. And so we have to have that large format retail. We have to have retail of a certain size and style that can afford to put in the roads, the sewer, the storm, the sidewalks, the infrastructure, to
Right.
get their customer base there, to allow the ag tech startup company or the other incubators or the other cool, exciting, radical McMinnville proud industries to be able to have their 4 acres of industry makerspace to launch. It's and that causes that causes some friction in the community. My dad always said motion creates friction, and as we move forward, as we progress, those are delicate, tough conversations. And it I'll tie it into that second question you asked. It does tie into the downtown improvement plan, that Third Street improvement plan, especially when we think about how and if that area will or won't compete with the downtown.
Right.
And I tend, after a lot of conversations, again, now bringing in my experience working with the Downtown Association and personal and professional relationships with a lot of the people who own businesses downtown, I'm more convinced that the more we try and make that smaller retail, smaller little mom and poppy out there, that's when we compete and have trouble with the downtown, versus larger format retail might not compete as much with the downtown, and it might be a different offering and an amenity, versus the people who buy books at Costco aren't the same people who buy books at Third Street Bookstore, right? And so it is, but at that same time, the nature of the Third Street Improvement Project is, we have that historic old district that we all know and love and appreciate as our downtown is a historic old district with historic old sewer lines and water lines and infrastructure and outdated modes of accessibility. I mean, you've walked down that. I have a hard time walking a straight line down some of those areas with the condition of the sidewalks and the tables out there. And we want, COVID pushed us into, my gosh, we should just close this down and have nothing but tables and beer gardens and music going down there. So accessibility wise, it's just a nightmare. This plan gives us the opportunity to redevelop and reimagine how this could look and function, perhaps more importantly, function in the future, to be able to make sure it just doesn't become blight, and hope that we just avoid changing it and let it go derelict. So that also is, we're now touching a real nerve of nostalgia and the old McMinnville and the beautifulness, but we do it carefully, and I feel like we need the opportunity to be able to have another 100 years of that downtown, and this is a perfect project to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So the very last question that I have is, what do you want McMinnville voters to know about you that they may not know currently?
I feel like I've been a pretty open book, and I'm never one to hide behind anything. And so I feel like if people know me, they know everything about me. So maybe in the more fun, anecdotal way, I've been a vegetarian for over 10 years. Maybe that's surprising to people. I'm one of the small percentages, and maybe you'll recall this, Howie, of a shout out to our previous interview 4 years ago, of a devout Steely Dan man.
Yeah.
And had a proud dad moment where we were on a road trip and Hiram was sitting in the back, and we had no music on, and he just sort of chimes in and says, "Dad, can you put on Steely Dan?" And it was great.
Awesome.
So eclectic dad music I like. No, I'm just native McMinnvillian and super passionate about service to the community. I'm always open. I never roll into council with my mind firmly made up, and I'm an immovable object or an unopenable book. It's quite the opposite. I come with almost too much going on in the noodle, and need help narrowing my focus and staying in there. And so always open to discussing the issues with whoever from the community, however and whenever. So I love and appreciate opportunities to talk about this stuff. Howie, thank you for doing it and inviting me on and asking good questions. And I'm sorry we only got to maybe a third of the questions you
Yes,
had
that's
sent over.
yeah.
So you'll have to have me back on more than every 4 years.
There you go. So again, thank you so much, Zach, and best of luck during the election. And people, thank you for watching today. But more importantly, get out and vote.
Get out and vote. Send it in.
Send it
Drop it
in.
off.
Drop it off into those boxes. And don't
Zack for
worry
Mac.
about those guys in their truck sitting a block away.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Zach.
Thank you, Howie.
Very, very well. And you've done a great job.
Appreciate it.